Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis show. And talking about arbitration matters, blah, blah, blah. The Ghana Arbitration Group, that's the mediators and arbitration group in Ghana, is inviting all of you to their conference, where they will demystify a lot of issues and show you that access to arbitration is the in thing now. It's not only running to the court at first instance. And this is coming off on the 8th of this month. That's in the course of this week at the Golden Tulip from 9 a.m. to 2. Thank you very much. I know you're not going to serve me with any invoice, because this is the least I can do for my group. Professor Kofi Koshiga is leading that group. Thank you very much. He's the Dean of the Faculty of Law of the University of Ghana. Thank you indeed. And who do I have here? Senor Hosi joining us for the next 30 minutes. Sorry for the inconveniences that has to cost to you. You were here very early in the morning. Senor Hosi is the CEO of the BDCs chamber. Thank you very much. Now, I'll start with Kokurada, because he has the same confusion like I do, and mine may have some cynicism to it. I don't know what his is, because he says his is a sincere one. That the creditor does not know how much debt he's owed by the alleged debtor. Koku, and national security has taken over the issue, and all sorts of things are now going on. What's your initial appreciation of this BDCs exchanges?
I have to be honest with you. I do not really understand the issues involved. But there are things that, first, I find a bit critical, and I would want it established here. The audit report that is at the center of this public discourse, is it a draft report or a final report? What is the status?
It appears to be a final report, even though what is lacking that you would have expected would have been part of that report is that those that it affects would have made an input. Now we are being told they didn't make those.
Then it cannot be a final report.
There's no final report.
It cannot be a final report. And then what is the target? What of scrutiny? What was it seeking to do? That draft audit report.
To make the proper reconciliation, so that we can know how much exactly the BDCs owe BOST.
Yeah, you see, but I have had a history, because I committed those errors much earlier in my career. So over the years now, I have a certain standard position, being that if it's either a management letter or a draft report, I don't circulate it. Or I don't rely on it, even though they may contain findings and observations that are credible. Let's be honest. I'm not for one moment suggesting that.
So you won't circulate it even if you intercept?
Yes, because I won't use it as a basis for judgmental commentary. Because I've had the experience of having done that before and issues backfiring. Because when the final report came out, some of those interim findings and observations had been, reversed.
So you think the graphic failed in publishing this, leading to all of these debates?
I'm not going to talk of only one newspaper. I think it's been out there in the media, social media, the electronic media platform.
But the graphic that started
yeah, but it's not fair. I don't. Everybody knows I have a position. I don't judge fellow practitioners. There's an element of holier than thou attitude in that posture, because I myself am part of it. So I don't do it. I don't do it. I like the public to judge.
I just wanted your preliminary comments. I'll get Senor to get us into a bit of the detail, and then we'll do the critique. Now, see, and I'm aware of it, so you can't take us what does not exist. What this Ernst & Young audit report, what does it say, including where it indicts your people?
Okay. Well, let me try and cure.
Who commissioned it?
Well, it was actually commissioned by BOST. It was done on the sole instruction of just BOST.
Right. Okay.
If you and I have a problem, we have doubts with something, I think the ideal thing for us to sit down and agree, all right, let's find somebody independent to go. We set the parameters, we agree on the scope of work and all that. It was commissioned by BOST, and the scope of work is here. And if you wish me to read, process documentation of receipt and issue of petroleum products at BOST storage tanks, identification and review of internal controls, documentation of tank calibration system and verification of compliance by BOST, review of supporting documents for all receipts of petroleum products into BOST tanks from BDCs for the period under review, review of supporting documents for all issues of petroleum products from BOST tanks to BDCs for the period under review, field visit to selected BOST depots, and recomputation of product losses for each BDC for the period under review.
Okay.
And
this became necessary because of
hold on. In summary, what they've been really commissioned to do is largely recompile our stock balances and also review the BOST internal processes, okay, which BOST has its free, I mean, it has to do, it's its own business, really.
Right.
But when you have to do something with us, I think that should have just been fair. We set the parameters, because the limitations and the scope was largely defined by just BOST.
Okay,
all right, but let's leave that. And then the report.
No, it's self-serving and because of the
to me, for
what brought us here was that you had a dispute over how much you actually were.
The next now, let me. Something I'm going to answer you, but let me cure Uncle Kweku's
confusion. Whether it is final or it's not final.
I think yesterday, Mr. Wadaku was in your studio. It was on top story. The MD of BOST.
Right.
He was there, and it was clear that they didn't have a final report. He said the audit was still in the process.
Okay.
They had written to their people to come up with any claims that may have been raised from the preliminary findings and all that. They've written to BDCs. That's what he said.
Right.
So they asked him, I think even put it categorically, so there is no final report.
Right.
So that has been clearly established. So all we are dealing with now is a draft report. So just to also correct you. How did we come here? We've been dealing with BOST since 2009. We started bringing our products in there in March also of 2009, and we've been there for a while. But somewhere in 2013, we realized that the rate at which products were getting out and the rate at which we were putting in, there was quite some gap, meaning that BOST really had some form of a hole within its stock system. And yes, we are aware that BOST makes stock losses, real stock losses, and we understand how they are made. We got a bit alarmed. You put in 40 million liters in 5 days, you can't find the 40 million liters because other people are owed by BOST, and BOST will just make that one available. Our products are not put in separate tanks. There's something we call commingling. So all of us put our products together. We all draw down on it together. So it's more like a book trail of what everyone has.
I want us to come to this point. As for the history of BOST and its losses, we have been familiar with some of them. They have, at a point, have had to make losses to the tune of about 14 million or more. And then, quite recently, 2013, they posted that they had made losses of over 45 million Ghana cedis, not dollars, really. Now, the two of you, I mean, BOST and BDCs, were haggling over a debt.
We didn't have confusion. No, we never had confusion about a debt.
You didn't?
No, there was none. You see, we don't just wake up one morning and just appear and you owe me that. It doesn't happen like that. This is serious business. On a monthly basis, you go to BOST, you reconcile your position, and it's duly signed. You haggle it out, you show your evidence, they show their evidence. Whatever is doubted is the evidence, is the name of the game. So this is done over the last 6 years. It's done on a monthly basis. So that is not the problem. There's nothing like the creditor or the debtor not knowing what is owed. No, not at all. So in 2013, when everything came to naught, most of us moved out of BOST, even though BOST was cheaper, you know, because it couldn't account for our stocks. So we moved out of BOST. We established a position in August, and it was about 61 million liters that could not really be accounted for. And there was a ministerial thing thereabout and all that. So we just had to negotiate how that 61 million liters will be paid for. At the time, the value was about $50 million. And that was it. So it's been discussions going back and forth on how we'll pay. And last year, BOST decided to commission Ernst & Young to audit their own stock reconciliation reports, which we have jointly signed off over the last 6 years. And they wanted to see the underlying documents that was used, because the underlying documents, they are way bills, and then you got R10 reports that are about this height, if you have to keep them over 6 years and all that, you know. And that is how we just got here. And it's not like one morning anybody just walked in and then you owe me and you should pay me. No. This thing is established on a monthly basis, signed off by all parties. The whole reason why we all got out there was with the graphic report. It referred to the stock audit as having established massive fraud. We conniving with other people to rob BOST and then bribery and forgery, all kinds of wild claims. I've been very disappointed with the graphic, I must be honest with you. And at that stage, we hadn't even seen
the graphic. Didn't generate the report, so
the report's nowhere. Samson, nowhere. There's nobody who has seen the report anywhere who understands this report, who will tell you that the report has established fraud against anybody. Yesterday, the MD of BOST made it clear. The chairman said it the last time that those were not their words and those were not the words of the report. The Deputy Minister of Petroleum also came out to also say the same thing. So I'm not too sure who I'm really talking to when we talk about this forgery and fraud story. You know, so that first of all should be absolutely.
So what is
managing
national
director,
security supposed to do?
The managing director is also saying that he's going to deal with corrupt officials within the system.
The existence, no. Hold on.
And BNI
or
national security has taken over investigation into this matter.
There is nothing. Why would the minister state that no BDC there's any finger pointed to any BDC as having connived with anybody? Why would the MD of BOST himself say that the claim of fraud is not their words? And there's nothing like that there. Why would the chairman say so? If you read it, this is a stock reconciliation report. Those who understand accounting and audit, it's very simple. To establish fraud through an audit process, you need to run a forensic audit. This is a simple in and out balance kind of thing. And I don't know how come we reach the claim of fraud. And you know, for us as a business, our business is international. We deal with parties who have very strong ethics and who have certain standards in dealing with corrupt people. So when you send stories like this and you back it up with a brand like E&Y, that's dangerous. You know, so this is a very serious thing, and probably we need to relook and have to engage graphic again over the matter.
So graphic is solely to blame for all of this.
Right now, everybody has disowned them. They asked the chairman of BOST. He says those are not their words. They asked the MD of BOST. He says the media, you people are quoting. You people know how to sensationalize, sensationalize your own things. You know, it's very disappointing.
This is very damaging to your reputation.
Of course.
What demands are you making of the graphic?
I think
other media for that matter?
I think come Monday we'll be engaging our lawyers more seriously. I spent time trying to deal with the media issues, and come Monday we'll start looking at the legal issues so we can move forward. Now they talk about us robbing BOST of national reserves. For God's sake, over this whole period, BOST did not really have a single liter of strategic reserve.
But this small bit, you know, that's also curious to me that they didn't have strategic reserve and they are talking about this. But this small bit about
how can I see what you don't
about
have?
speaking to your lawyers, is it the case that you are just quickly running, you know, to sue them, or just demanding them to retract and apologize where they are?
Graphic has always been a partner to our business.
Right.
They project our concerns and they help us get the right attention required and all that. And I think that I don't have a problem with the MD of Graphic. He's a friend. I think we can call Puzo, what's up? You know, so that's not a problem. I've spoken to Ransford. We need to talk. That's so we need to sit down. We need to understand the issues, and we need to resolve that.
I'm excited about that. So that it's not as if you are quickly running to
court. No, you see, this is a huge platform. So for starters, it should be clear. Nobody has no audit report, whether draft or a funder that doesn't exist, has implicated any BDC of any fraud, corruption, conniving to rob anybody. First of all, I can't steal what you don't have. Okay, so that aside, the audit itself is not something that's supposed to be absolutely cast in stone.
Okay,
you read it and it tells you it's reliance restricted because of the thoroughness of the job. The audit was not done that thorough to ensure that every single evidence required to authenticate all these reconciliation sheets that were authenticated years ago. It's a re-authentication, really. It's not a primary authentication. We are trying to authenticate what they themselves authenticated years back. You know, and it's you need to go through the processes. When product comes into the system, there are all kinds of agencies that have copies of it. You have the mooring company that takes a copy. the out-end reports are not issued by BDCs. The out-end reports are issued by, what do you call it, the independent inspection companies. So they also have one. The BOST itself would have one. And you know, I can't inflate what I have. Because when I inflate something on the out-end report, I'll have to pay the supplier more. It doesn't make economic sense, even if I was a thief. Okay? And if you are going to now discharge, BDCs do not interface at all physically with the discharge process. It is BOST, the oil marketing company, the tanker driver, and we have no earnings out of that. So we also don't have any economic reason to try and understate it, because those are the only two conditions that can actually make you have an overdrawn position. Then yesterday, there was something that came up that, okay, now it's moved from us robbing BOST, we're robbing ourselves. We say, okay, fine. Granted that we were robbing our own selves, then it means that if we are together and I've robbed from you to add to mine, then any robbery that you detect out of me should actually match what you've been robbed of. It's simple.
In the first place, you say, and you've been saying this for quite a while now, that we do not have any stocks, as it were.
No, I said we did not have strategic stocks over the period. The last strategic stock came on a vessel, empty, not stock, and Mere Baltic. About 34,000 metric tons. And a little was bought from Tom. And that was in 2008, just prior to the elections. November and December.
Yeah, but I'm reading the statement by, this is the press conference from BOST Junior Unionized Staff, 30th April 2015.
They talk about 6 weeks storage.
And they say over the past 6 months, BOST have been importing gasoline and gas oil, and currently is able to hold strategic reserve petroleum for the country. They said the last 6 months.
Okay, now the audit period is 2009 to July 2014.
Okay.
As at now, as we speak, BOST has an arrangement, and it's a vehicle for some international suppliers to bring in some products. So that is true. As to whether it's strategic or not, that's a different discussion altogether. I'm not too sure Ghana owns the rights to that one, but it has nothing to really do. The period that we're talking about. The first product that came from BOST was, I think, in September or so of 2014. Okay. So the shortage time, it was BDCs who came back, and thanks to the bank and then His Excellency the President coming in. But you know something?
Has the National Security invited you yet?
No. I don't see any of that even happening, because it's
no, but they are supposed to have taken over the matter.
Well, I was told by the ministry that whatever they brought was packed and forwarded to National Security for them to evaluate and see if there's anything to be looked at.
The inconclusive, incomplete audit report.
Exactly. You see the thing. So I actually wonder what is being sent out there. But
it's serious.
I mean, for me, we are honest businessmen. We don't
who
mind.
Presented that to National Security?
Well, you heard the Deputy Minister of Petroleum saying that the ministry had forwarded it to them. And in simple terms,
meaning that they think there's some credibility.
Absolutely not. Because when you speak to the ministry, for them, simply put, they don't really understand this whole thing. They forwarded to the appropriate agency because somebody is trying to suggest fraud over this report. It's come out in the newspaper. So if it's come out in the newspaper, please, let's forward it to those people who can access, because we don't see anything.
No, as the ministry not study this?
Because they have to do that first.
The minister, Deputy Minister himself stated, no BDC has been implicated in any report. And you can't do it with just a stock reconciliation audit.
Okay, just hold on briefly. Now, Mike, thank you very much for agreeing to stay briefly with us. Do you make sense out of this? And I know you have followed this issue as well.
Well, I followed it in the press.
It's just
I just want to, observe a few things that I think it's a systemic challenge that we need to begin to deal with. First of all, it's obvious that we have a paper-based tracking and reconciliation system, which is part of the reason why you can have these deficits. I think it should be fairly easy to, build electronic systems, which would minimize the human discretion that would permit whatever you want to call it, errors, fraud, whatever it is, to lead to these deficits that can create this sort of confusion. So I think that BOST and the BDCs should begin to move quickly towards an electronic reconciliation system. Part of what would allow that to happen is if we minimize the use of tracking, the use of tracks to convey from depot to depot. If as much as possible we can increase the proportion of fuel conveyance that is done through pipes. then you can, it's a lot more easier to minimize the, some of these things. I think it's a broader, more complicated issue.
I'll tell you a few things.
The other side of it is that I think from a solution point of view, we need to encourage greater deregulation of the downstream sector of the petroleum industry. Currently, I think BOST has a largely monopolistic control. Well, there are some private folks. I mean, the firms like Cyrus Energy have built their own farms in Takoradi, but we need to encourage a lot more of that, where private companies are building their own storage systems. The way things are now, you have the risk of a single failure point. If you concentrate too much of the storage distribution around a few controlling entities like BOST. So I just look at it from a solutions point of view.
Right.
But I appreciate if you can throw more light on.
I'll tell you what.
On how the reconciliation system works.
I'll tell you something.
I appreciate. And I really admire his approach.
I really agree with you that generally we have to all move from the manual system, and I think that the MD and board of BOST they've actually taken those steps much earlier. They're trying to get electronic systems, and I give them that credit. I mean, Mr. Wadako has done great on that side. But pipelines, I'll tell you how BOST has really lost products over time. You move one truck from here all the way to Kumasi, and it has nothing to do with the BDC, because that's a BOST internal operation. You take 10,000 liters, it doesn't arrive there 10,000 liters. So there's a shortfall. But that is actually billed to the driver.
How do you explain that? How do you explain that? You take 10,000 liters.
You take 10,000. When you get to the place, they do it, and then you see they probably have 9,000 liters. 1,000 liters is missing. So you have to charge the transport company for that one. So that's done. I think over the years, about 14 million liters has been lost. All right? That's a given. You pump water from the Tema depot to the Akosombo depot. It arrives in the exact quantity. But pump fuel, there will be siphoning in the pipeline. And you see, there are systemic issues that BOST has been struggling with, and we've all tried to help in trying to highlight them. Is BOST really the sole dependent person? No, we don't depend solely on BOST. For a good while, BOST wasn't working, and there was no problem with product supplies in the country. As a matter of fact, the supply capacity from the private sector is much bigger than the non-refinery, state-owned storage capacity. So we are really fine as a people. That is not alarming in any way. But you know what? I think that the internal challenges there was definitely some pilfering that was happening. And I think that has been in the news for some time. Tanks could drive into the system. Somebody deliberately takes a wrong dip because you don't have an independent inspector managing that process. But for we, the BDCs. When we interface with BOST, we deal with independent inspectors like SGS.
Okay, just hold on briefly.
Somebody who plays a manual.
I have on the line Duncan Amwa, who is the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us here on Newsfile, sir. Okay.
Good morning, Samson.
Right.
And, good morning to your listeners.
Thank you very much. We are interested in the intervention that's so critical that you want to make, but can you please lower the volume on the set that you have before you? It will help.
Well, that is done, Samson.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Quickly, I quite don't think all that Senor is saying represents the truth. In fact, the BDCs have not been cited as having done any bad thing, just like he said. But clearly, prior to the audit report by Ernst & Young, there were losses, okay, which these same BDCs were claiming against BOST. Let's agree that BOST did not keep strategic reserves, although that is in itself contestable. If the BDCs, 10 of them have products in one tank, and in the end, 8 of them cannot find their products, but the products have gone out, it stands to reason that through the connivance of some officials at the depot or the terminal, the gantry where loading goes on, between the official there and whichever BDC took hold of that stock, okay, the 8 other BDCs whose stock may not be accounted for by BOST, the product went somewhere. That is what has been established by the Ernst & Young report. Obviously, the staff within BOST who have been implicated are not being shielded. And invariably, the BDCs who in the end took, a stock of those products that were either overrun or overpumped are also not going to be shielded. I get quite surprised to hear Senor saying now and here.
If you can clear this immediately, if you can clarify this immediately, sir. You spoke about some members of the BDCs who have been indicted. Is that so?
Exactly.
Who are these? And
how come the minister?
And Senor is asking, how is it that the minister is heard saying that no one has been implicated, and also that the chairman has also the managing director, is it?
Yeah, and the chairman.
Who is also the chairman?
No, the two of them.
The two of them have said the same thing on this same platform.
You see something, until and of course, unless the investigation runs a full haul, it will be preposterous to say that they've done some acts of corruption or they've colluded to rob. But what the Ernst & Young report categorically stated is that some of the BDCs, whose names are clearly captured in the report, had overruns of products that they brought into BOST tanks. So therefore, what it means is that if I brought 1 million liters, and in the end, I take hold or I end up giving orders for 2 million and it's been supplied, then clearly I have overrun my stock position. And as we speak, you see, the point ought to be made clearly and forcefully that within the period 2009-2014, BOST continuously made product losses of significant volumes. Sometimes in a year it was 45 million, sometimes it went to 55 million. If BOST didn't have a product and it was just the BDCs trading among themselves or taking their products, where came in those losses that BOST had to incur?
When was the last vessel?
You know, that's the critical question.
Very legitimate
question.
question.
Don't even leave it at that.
I'm asking, when was the last vessel? I mean, Mr. Duncan, you seem to prefer to know much about the industry. So tell us, when was the last vessel within this period? What was the name of the last vessel that brought the cargo for BOST? And when was the last time? When was the last time? Can you tell everybody when BOST last bought in products?
Let me please on record. Let me.
You see,
no, he's talking.
Let me please on record something. Let me please on record again that BOST is not indeed saying anywhere that the said product that these BDCs have overrun is either for BOST or what. But at the end of the day, when the accounting year runs, right, BDC 1, BDC 2, BDC 3, 4, 5, 10 are all reporting, you know, products supposed to be in the tanks. The tanks are empty. And BOST has had to take up these costs. In the end, if you did a thorough audit, you'll be able to track where these products actually went to. And that is why I said the beautiful thing in all of this is that BOST is not making any attempt to shield its own officers.
That's right. Thank you for that very critical intervention.
Who is saying they didn't take anything? I think Senor would answer that later.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and also shedding this important aspect of this particular audit. Thank you very much. That's Duncan Amwa, who is the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. Senor Hosi is the CEO of the BDCs. You say you don't get him?
Respectfully, Mr. Dankamwa has very little knowledge about industry.
You can't say
that.
No,
I'm saying that on authority.
This is
of what chamber?
Of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers.
He himself, has he got an office?
He doesn't have to be registered.
Respectfully. No, I'm coming respectfully.
No, that's unfair.
No, it's not unfair. I think that you have
look at the substance rather than the form that is not registered.
You see,
and so
somebody speaking as though he's speaking on authority and you entertain it and you want to educate your people is quite a problem. You should know who you invite to speak to your case.
He made logical sense to me.
He never did. If you know the industry, that's propaganda. Now, one, let me tell you, if BOST hasn't brought in anything, how can he have anything? Two, BDCs don't even interface with the delivery process. So how can you even claim that? So you see, it's just a show of absolute lack of knowledge of the industry. And I'm quite disappointed that we'll take such comments quite seriously for your show. You should know the people you invite, and you try and educate your discerning listeners on a Saturday. Respectfully, Samson. Now,
you should be speaking to the substance rather than seeking to attack him personally in the manner you are doing.
No,
I think that's unfair.
That's not unfair, because we should really try and educate our people. What he said was all totally flawed. Now, let me tell you. Take the Ernst & Young report. There's nowhere. The minister has come out, the MD of BOST has spoken, the chairman of BOST has spoken. So where would he, Mr. Duncan, come from and say these things? Now look at the Ernst & Young report. It says 8 people, 8 people, 8 BDCs were cleared, as in the reconciliation, and even gave them more. In the case of another 8, they didn't find sufficient documentation. There was a schedule of documentation that they required. And that is what has to be done. And yesterday, thankfully, the MD of BOST stated that he was willing to sit down with BDCs so that they can reconstruct this. And he himself stated that it may be a matter of record keeping.
What's refreshing is that you guys are going to get to sit together and to resolve a few matters. Could just the 1 minute that we have left, some 20 seconds, you wanted to make a point?
Let me use that to wish my first boy a happy 4 years anniversary. It's King Ramsey Kweku Baku.
Happy birthday, King Ramsey.
I am still confused about this issue.
Okay.
I perhaps need time and space to study thoroughly. I have to be honest.
Well, happy birthday to King Ramsey. I've seen you only in pictures. Very handsome guy. Yes.
Yeah, Samson, I mean, just quickly, I think that, we should begin to move towards building a full fuel exchange system in the fuel sector in this country. And a system of pipelines that have automatic sensors built into them would enable us to monitor in real time and be able to track people who pilfer, people who, siphon. So there's a solution. I think we should move away from this manual system. We should move towards an electronic system.
Thank you. We have run out of time. This has been Newsfile. I'm Samson Anyanini. My guests have been Professor Infojo, who left us a while ago. Also, you've heard Theo Echampong, also Michael Koto, also Kweku Bako Jr., and just joined us about some 40 minutes ago. It's Senior Hosi of the BDCs. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon. This show is repeated at 9:30 on this same platform. Gentlemen, we say thank you a lot for coming.